Well, we can't take it this week. All the friends don't want another speech. Hoping for a better day to hear what she's gotta say. All about that climate change crisis. You got it while it was hot. But now frustration and heartache is what you've got. That's why they talk about climate change. But now you're trying to be some. Now you gotta do some. Wanna be someone who wows, but you're thinking about the times you did. You took every ounce. Well, it's sure gotta be a shame when you're gonna scream and shout. The above lyrics I've just sung are the opening lines to the song Personality Crisis by the New York Dolls, with the word personality replaced by climate change in order to make it more relevant to the subject we're discussing here, which is Greta Thunberg too over-emotional? A couple of years ago, Piers Morgan reacted to her UN Climate Summit speech on Good Morning Britain. This Swedish girl is now 19, but at the time she was just 16. On the show Good Morning Britain, they praised her for being an inspiration to many people, leading the charge for tackling climate change. Piers himself said he thought she was a very happy young girl looking forward to a bright and wonderful future. He praised her for being highly impressive, articulate and passionate, but he also had conflicting views about her speech and the way in which it was delivered. He admitted that the climate change crisis was a serious problem, but felt that overall Greta's speech was too apocalyptic, too melodramatic. He was concerned about millions of young people watching it and being instilled with the fear that the world was about to end. He felt that Greta was using very emotive language in this speech and wondered if it was all a bit OTT. Do you have any feelings all on the climate change crisis? Piers did actually use the word over-emotional when referring to Greta, but is she really over-emotional? He also admitted that she was an extraordinary character, that she was fearless, that a lot of people found her very hyperbolic and very hysterical, and that when he watched her it made him feel somewhat uncomfortable. There was another bit of information that he disclosed about her, and that was that she had been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. This is a point which is of interest to me personally because I myself have been diagnosed with this form of autism. Piers also mentioned that Theta Grunberg herself had a history through her childhood of depression, OCD, all of which had been diagnosed by doctors. He also noted that she had gone 2 months without eating and had also gone for months without talking to anyone outside her immediate family. He also noted that people with Asperger's syndrome can develop an obsessive interest in a narrow-focused issue, and that you can experience things like pain and fear far more intensely than those who don't have a condition. To throw some light on this, let me tell you a bit about myself, since, as I've previously mentioned, I myself have been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. I will say what Piers said about those with my condition does apply very much to me, since I do experience pain and fear far more intensely than what most people do. I'm a terribly nervous person. In the final years of my mother's life, she got terribly ill, and her illnesses almost caused me to have a breakdown because I experienced what is going on around me far more intensely than what most people do. My mother suffered 2 strokes, the second of which was a major one, and in between these 2 strokes she had a bout of encephalitis. I was with her when she was displaying the symptoms of these things. When she had the encephalitis, she actually collapsed on the landing and then had a seizure in hospital. She had a second stroke just a few months after this, and as I've said, I was with her when she was displaying the symptoms of it, and it was a major one. Her sister-in-law went to see her in hospital shortly after she'd had it, and she was in such a terrible state that she asked her son and daughter-in-law to get her out of her immediately, as she couldn't bear to look at her. Although I'm not as nervous as I was, my nerves are still quite badly affected. I don't think anyone could go through all the experiences I've gone through without it having somewhat sort of an effect on them, even if the effects are just short term. But it'll be 7 years this summer since my mum passed away, and I still haven't got over my bad experiences yet. I have a slight fear of heights, which means I don't know if I would ever have the guts to go on an aeroplane. My fear of heights means that I feel uncomfortable and nervous sitting in the top row of a cinema. I even feel nervous sitting in front of a cinema screen, but in the top row, even more so. There was a film I went to see a few years back in which Tom Cruise does a parachute jump out of a helicopter, and because I was sitting in the top row of a cinema at the time, it was literally turning my stomach up and I just had to leave and go on the toilet. My nervous condition also affects my ability to drive. I've had hundreds of driving lessons, but I never got to the stage where I can take my test yet. And this is due to being nervous of the other traffic. I have my own car, but as many of you will know, I have to wait until friends can accompany me in it before I can use it. The furthest I've ever driven in it is from my flat in Norfolk, Cheshire, to the cinema at Warrington and back. I was terribly nervous about doing this, so much so that on the way home, I actually got pulled up by the police, who were concerned because I was dawdling along the road in fear. Years ago, my nerves were so bad that when I was at my voluntary job at St Luke's Hospice down Winsford Industrial Estate, I had a panic attack. An woman who worked there had to give me a glass of water and take me back to the respite home where I was staying at the time. I had actually thought I was having a stroke. I wasn't really though, it was merely a panic attack brought on by the accumulation of stress which I've been building up over the past few years of my life. I was also volunteering for the Headway charity shop in Northwich, and I remember remarking to my boss there that it was my Asperger's syndrome that was making my life so difficult in the face of the current events. I told her I had an old school friend whose father had actually been murdered, and that it hadn't seemed to have affected him in the same way as the misfortunes I was experiencing in my life were affecting me. He just went out to work and looked after his wife and kids, even despite the ordeal he'd been through. Anyway, that's enough about me. This is meant to be about Greta Thunberg, the climate change activist from Sweden. If you have any opinions on this, please feel free to comment on the video, since I've put a lot of YouTube clips out there and so far not many people have commented on them. Anyway, bye for now, bye everyone, and I'll be back with more discussions on various topics.